Welcome to the podcast that has earned recognition in 2019 and again this year, 2020, as one of the best podcasts in marketing research. This is Research Business Daily Report. If you'd like to lend your support to our video series, please go to RBDR's exclusive community at the crowdfunding platform patreon.com/RBDR. I'm Bob Lederer for more than 25 years, the respected voice in market research. Yesterday, we took our first look at the polling that preceded the 2020 election. It's fair to say that pollsters, for the most part, predicted significant spreads in state after state between the Democratic and Republican presidential and Senate nominees. But on Election Day, that percentage, insofar as differentials, was roundly smaller in many contests. And those inaccurate projections, I believe, hurt the cause of market research in the eyes of the public. Thus, our special interest in what went wrong. Today, in another expanded RBDR, we hear from the Mellman Group President, Mark Mellman, about what he thinks happened. Mark?
Some of these states that where the polling is pretty accurate, they may be wrong in terms of who is ahead. But, for example, everybody thought Florida was going to be very close. It looks like it's very close. Most of the polls seem to think that that Biden was going to win. Trump looks like he won, but it was going to be very close. And there's always undecideds and people breaking late. The exit polls tell us that people who decided late decided overwhelmingly for Trump. So there's a story to tell there. You look at a state like Wisconsin, on the other hand, or I mean, not name states particularly, but you look at some of the other states where people are having polls showing 8, 10, 12-point leads, and they're, essentially 1-point leads, 2-point leads. Okay, that's a bigger problem. But we really have to, and nationally, we don't know what the number is going to be yet. Right now, it's around, call it 4. I think it'll probably end up being around 6. We won't know that for quite some time until all the West Coast ballots are in and counted. But probably around 6 and 6-point margin. And that is not, it's close to some of the averages and not to others. It's close to some polls and not to others. But looking at margins is always tricky, because, as you know, the margin of error exists on both numbers. So the margin of error on the margin is actually twice the margin of error on the number. So if you have a poll with a margin of error of 4 points, you got a margin of error of 8 points on the margin. So those looking at margins is always sort of a difficult task. It's the thing we naturally do. It's where our eyes go or our minds go. But it's fraught with more statistical noise than just saying, 51% of the vote plus or minus 4. That it's a different thing. So in any event, it's not clear yet really how far these polls are off, and we're going to have to do some work on that. But it's also clear, I think, to those of us that have been doing it, that it's a much more difficult time to be doing polling. I mean, not only our response, we talked about cell phones years ago, and most people have found ways around that to important extents. But you still have, problem. Now you have people who don't answer a phone that they don't know who's calling. They don't answer a number that they don't know. You have people, and we try and meet people where they are. We try and do combined text online with cell, with landline. But the truth is we're doing it sort of blindly, because what's the right proportion of text to online versus cell versus landline? There's no magic formula that I know of that tells us what's the right mix of those. But what we are learning is that, first of all, it's a lot harder. Second of all, if you're just using the old techniques, if you're just using phone, for example, and doing cell and landline, or you're just using the new techniques and just doing online, you have a bigger chance of getting it wrong if you're using one technique. You have to meld them, but exactly how do you meld them? That we don't know. And there are certain types of people that are obviously much harder to reach than others. We found this, we are able to pull off a voter file. So we know about people's background and behavior when we're calling them. We know who we're getting, we know who we're not getting. But it was a lot easier to get Democrats on the phone than it was to get Republicans. And I don't think that's the shy Trump voter per se, but they're just much more likely, the Republicans are less likely to answer their phone. So, and less likely to take a survey.
Is there such a thing as a shy Trump voter in your mind?
There are survey shy Republicans. I don't know if they're Trump shy voters, which is to say that we have no particular evidence that people who the people who answer surveys are voting for Trump, but they're reluctant to say so, or not saying so, or saying something different. We do have evidence that there's a lot of Republicans who are not anxious to take surveys.
Haley says, in his mind, it comes down to really trying to develop some sort of a personal understanding or relationship. And I guess he's talking about telephone polls, because you can't do this with an online poll. But on a telephone poll, to basically put them so at ease that the wall that they've built up about not expressing themselves comes down.
Well, there's no question in my mind. Now, look, we've known this for a long time. There's no question that interviewer quality and the nature of that relationship that the interviewer forges with the respondent is a critical variable in getting good quality survey data. There's just no question about that. There's also no question that now, if you're just doing polls by phone and just relying on those interviewers to build those relationships, you're going to get it wrong, because you're not going to have the right mix of people.
Did you change anything in your mix of options of getting answers this year from what you've done in the past?
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. Over the last 4 years, we've certainly moved. We've vastly increased our use of the text online. So we have people that we are sampling by sending a text and saying, come to this website and take our survey online. But it's a random sample of people, and it's not a panel. We're just texting a random sample of people, more or less random sample of people, with coverage errors, with all those problems that we have with everything else. But we're texting those people and asking them to complete the survey online. And they're people that we get that way that we would not get through traditional means. And the answers they give are different from the answers that the people we get on cell phones give and the people that we get on landlines give. And that's what I mean before about sort of putting these back together. I think one thing we've learned, one thing we know, is that if you're not trying all three, and maybe some fourth or fifth, but if you're not trying at least those three modes of contact, you're missing something really important. What we don't know is how to put them back together in a meaningful way. We do know how many registered Republicans and how many registered Democrats and how many registered independents there are. So we can put that together. If we're off in that in some way, we know how to put that back together, because there's an objective fact here about the number of registered Democrats, Republicans, and independents. There's no objective information about who's more likely to do a text online versus a cell phone versus a landline. So you can arbitrarily say a third, or you could say 60-40, 60-30-30, 40-30-30. I mean, you can say anything you want that adds up to 100. But what it's going to be, what's the right mix? Nobody knows that yet. That's going to be an important thing to find out.
Has anybody tried to figure that out? Like APOR or anybody like that?
Not that I know of. My sense is it's part of the answer. And yes, somebody has to get to the bottom of it.
Would APOR be the appropriate maybe committee to pull it all together?
Perhaps. But let's put it this way, I'm not sure. There's not an easy way to do it, I don't think, because it takes generating a lot of data and doing I'm not even sure what the methodology is to make the right determination, but it's some sophisticated work. So, but getting some of our best statisticians to think about that and to work on the problem, I think would be very important advance. In 2010, in Nevada, Harry Reid was running. It was the majority leader. There were 1 million polls. Every one of them showed us losing except ours. We happened to be right. That was good. But you have the same thing in Maine. Every poll that I know of has shown Gideon ahead. And obviously she didn't win. So I don't think anybody can look at that and say they're satisfied. But again, I stress we need to wait for the final results to see just how dissatisfied we need to be.
Tomorrow we're going to look at the success of Trafalgar Group, where pollster Robert Cahaly claims to have figured out how to coax shy Trump voters to participate in his polls. Cahaly had predictive polling success where many of his peers did not, but at the same time, some less publicized failures, so be sure to tune in. That wraps up today's Research Business Daily Report. We want to thank you for watching RBDR, whether you do it occasionally or every single day. For many viewers, watching RBDR is time well spent, and there's no reason for anyone out there to hesitate if they'd like to share any of our videos with a friend or a peer. And we hope you will consider becoming an RBDR Patreon supporter, which is possible by visiting patreon.com/RBDR. Till we see you again, hopefully tomorrow, please stay safe.